Welcome to our Library Discovery Hour. Thank you for joining us today. And a special thanks to our friends of the library for their generous support every year. I'm Monica Figueroa, the Director of Organizational Development and Library Human Resources at Carolina. We are excited to be hosting this new Library Discovery Hour series that gives you an up-close look at the university libraries and a chance to meet the librarians and archivists behind every story we share. Today's program is the second of 4 Discovery Hours planned between now and May. We are thrilled to have so many people again on the call today, so settle in for the next hour with your lunch if you're on the East Coast, or your coffee or tea if this is early morning for you over on the West Coast. The university libraries is more than books, spaces, and collections. We are powered by the people who work in each of our 4 main libraries and 4 branch libraries. Our staff currently totals 263 folks in all types of roles, some working directly with students and faculty, and others behind the scenes. We're also one of the top campus employers for our students. Our student workforce right now stands at about 185 undergraduate and graduate students. Today, 5 of our newest staff members will offer their perspectives on working at the university libraries. They'll talk about their experiences, what drew them to their roles, and what they are working on. We hope they will give you a sense of today's dynamic and innovative library system at Carolina and all the ways they advance the work of students, faculty on our campus and add to the vitality of our state. I will ask our panel a series of questions over the next 30 minutes and then open it up to your questions. Please submit your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen anytime during the presentation. We will try to answer as many as possible. Now, let's hear from our panelists. All right, panelists, it's wonderful to see your faces. Can you, each of you, share a bit about your background and what inspired you to become a library worker? And really, what drew you to the university libraries at Carolina? I will start with Brianna Magruder.
Thank you, Monica. Great to see you as well. I'm trying to figure out where to begin because my path to libraries wasn't very linear. It was very much kind of chaotic and full of a lot of textures and experiences, but I'm really grateful for all of those things now because I think that they've definitely shaped me to be a very empathetic and tapped into the communities that I work with as a community-driven archives program manager in the Southern Historical Collection. I will say that my journey started with building a relationship with a professor of mine. I was taking a Modern Gay America class at UNC Charlotte, and a professor of mine was doing a community-based project with some lesbian and gay elders in the Charlotte area, and he thought that I would be a good fit as a community interviewer. So I started interviewing people, started listening to these incredible narratives of these activists and elders that had done this incredible community building in Charlotte. And that led me to recognizing that this was a potential professional position in a special collections library. So from there, I kind of took a pause after undergraduate because of COVID, tried to figure out what I wanted to do with my life after that, decided what the heck, let's apply to UNC Chapel Hill, got in, received an assistantship as a CALA, got to continue doing this work, and now I'm doing this work professionally, and I'm very grateful to be here.
Thank you, Brianna. I'm going to call on Zuzel Ramos.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. Did I freeze? Okay. There we go. Nice to be here. And basically the way that I got into working with libraries is I was an undergraduate student at University of North Carolina, and I was transferring to UNC, and I needed money. So I was looking at the best like work study jobs that I could apply for, and I've always loved reading. And I feel like most students who love reading want to work in libraries. So that's what I did. I applied to work at the undergraduate library as a student assistant, and I got the job. I was there for 2 years, my junior and senior year, and it was such a great environment. I loved working at the libraries. And I was like, well, now I gotta go because I'm graduating. So bye to everyone, unfortunately. And I ended up moving. I'm originally from Miami, Florida, but I ended up moving back to North Carolina. And one of the main reasons was because I just love North Carolina and I love UNC. And I was like, I guess let me see if there's jobs available. And there was one. So I recently, in October, became the Access Services Associate and Asset Manager in the undergraduate library and Davis Library. So that's kind of how I got here. So I'm kind of still in the early times of my library work, but I think it's only the beginning.
Thanks, Suzelle. We always love when students stay or come back. Adrian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So Adrian Bell, and there we go. I was about to say, I seem to have frozen as well. Thank you very much for having me here today. And much like Zuzel, I found myself graduating and not entirely certain what to do after my bachelor's degree. So I moved back home, oddly enough, much like Zuzel, to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and got a job working as a library assistant for a small 2-year academic pay-as-you-go university. And while I was there, I was introduced to the concepts of preservation, which is a particular aspect of libraryship that focuses on the longevity of the collections. And I thought this was fascinating. I read a lot as a kid. I spent a lot of time in libraries, and I loved this idea of working towards giving children hundreds of years into the future the same opportunities I had. So I got my library degree and focusing specifically in preservation. And while I was studying, I also was working in the book repair lab, which is the version that my university had of our general collections conservation lab that's in Davis. And I found myself really enjoying the work with the books, the active hands-on, taking them apart, repairing them, producing a product that I could return to the students for them to do whatever they wished with again. And so after I graduated, I decided to focus more specifically on conservation, which is the physical repair and maintenance of the collection. And there's really no better place to do that sort of work than an academic library, in part because of the breadth of materials that we hold, but also in part because the use, the high degree of need, and the information that the universities disseminate out into the world. So.
Thank you, Adrian. All right, we're going to go to Bridget. Bridget, do you want to talk a little bit about what you do and how you found your way back to Carolina?
Hi, I'm Bridget Howe. I'm the Asian Studies librarian. And like Brianna, I feel like none of our path is linear, just like point to point. I always know I want to be a librarian and therefore I be a librarian. So I actually, for the longest time, did not know that librarians like a career trajectory. And I did my undergraduate degree in psychology education, closer but not close enough. And the one thing I learned is like I love research. I love exploring all the interesting topics out there, but I don't want to do research. I want to help other people do their research. So like that was like, what else can I do if I don't want to go into, psychology or like psychiatry field? And then like I proceed to go on to Duke for my first graduate degree, where that's the point I was like, hold on, you can actually work in a special collection and work with all the amazing primary source. So I was there while I took some UNC sales class and eventually I got in sales. And around that time, I was really fortunate to become a Auckland intern at Auckland Museum on campus, where I not only sort of practice my library skill in the museum database, but also found the joy of teaching and learning with a primary source. taught a lot of museum class, and really enjoy seeing like students learn something and their eyes spark. So that took me to my first job at University of Delaware, where I was the visual literacy librarian and also a resident there. And it went all good until I still really want to come back to UNC because I was here for so long, if including taking the class, that was 3 years. And I know a lot of people, and the working and learning environment are just like really relaxing but really supporting. So when this job came up, I was like, you know what? I'm going back. So that's why I'm here and still supporting my scholars, faculty, and student on their research while exploring like more other ways to collaborate with primary source.
Thank you so much, Bridget. Bridget is our Asian Studies librarian, and we're so happy to have her back at Carolina that you wanted to come back. Joel, a recent SILS graduate. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Joel Collier. I'm a clinical librarian here at the HSL. As similar to the stories you've heard already, I sort of had a non-linear path myself. Certainly didn't expect, even perhaps a year or two ago, to be in a clinical role. So I graduated with a bachelor's in history, actually, from Colorado State University. And afterward, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. I knew I was thinking about grad school as an opportunity, but I wasn't exactly sure what for. I was like, in the meantime, I needed a job. And I was like, where better to do it than the local public library? Because I have so many great memories growing up from being in the library and picking out books to read. It's really just a happy and warm place for me. And I'm like, where a better place to work for a job? What I didn't expect, though, is that I absolutely fell in love with library work. It is so much fun. I really loved my time there and realized that I wanted to seek it more as a career, and to do so, of course, you need the degree. So looking at different opportunities, there are a lot of great library schools across the nation, but Carolina is just one of the best. Throwing a little plug for SILS, but also what also called me down here was the fact that SILS offers a very unique internship opportunity with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And really, there's nothing else like it out there, I don't think. So that fortunately worked out for me, and I was very excited to come down here and learn about it. And it was through that internship really that I really learned about health sciences librarianship, something I hadn't really thought about before. But I remember working on a really project that I felt was really meaningful over at the EPA. Is they're doing a large sort of search for the folks in the Bad River Band. They've had negative health effects from pollution in that area. And I remember working on that and just being like, this is so meaningful to be able to help this community get the justice really that they deserve. And so I was really loving that. I remember I also got to work on my first systematic review over there, also in a public health sort of topic. And I just really fell in love with that work. And so when the clinical librarianship position opened up perfectly right as I was graduating, I was like, this is too good of an opportunity to pass up. And when I was in my interview with folks and got to meet everybody who works over here at the Health Sciences Library, I just thought it was a great community, really engaged on staying on top of things, new tools, new resources. It's a really great energy over here that I didn't really feel in some of my other interviews. So I know how special Carolina is, and I'm really glad to be able to stick around.
Thank you, Joel. We're so glad that you're here, that you decided to stick around. Thank you all so much for telling us a little bit about what has brought you back or kept you here at Carolina and working in the libraries. I wonder if now we can just sort of get into a little bit more about your roles and thinking about projects and initiatives that you're particularly proud of working on here at Carolina and why those things matter. So I'm going to start with Zuzel. I know you have one initiative that you're sort of really proud of that's in the undergraduate library.
Yeah, so I guess before I get into that, I can talk a little bit about my role as an Access Service Associate.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm the one that opens the undergraduate library, so you're not getting in if I don't show up to work, basically. And I'm just always there to provide like a nice space for students and community members to come in. Um, that's like kind of my main role, and like a lot more goes into it. Obviously, I'm with the people, the community, talking to students all the time. So that's like one of the aspects of my job. But the project that I'm really excited on that I get to work on, and it has nothing to do with my job description, which is a great thing about working in the UNC libraries, is that they, even if it's not in your job description, they allow you to like go find other things that you're really passionate about and have time to do that as well. And I work with the Overdrive collection that we have at UNC. And basically, it's books that we have online. And I love it so much. And I got to join it when I was a student assistant, because I would speak to Melissa and Caitlin, who work at the undergraduate library, a lot about just about how much I love books. And they said I was actually like the seed planted to create the brainstorming team for the Overdrive, which is now a team that meets in the undergraduate library where we like brainstorm to create collections and find books that we should add to our Overdrive collection. And it's just, I mean, who doesn't love books? I mean, I hope everyone here likes libraries, so you like reading. And I just think the Overdrive collection is such a great tool because it just provides a lot more access to a lot more different types of resources, like audiobooks, a lot of ebooks, in many different formats. So that's great. And I always interact a lot with students, and a lot of them want to check out popular reading materials. And we only have a small collection, unfortunately, of popular material, but we have a really large Overdrive collection, and it's still growing, and we can hope it still continues to grow. So I always share that with students, and they're always like so happy to know that they can just download Libby on their phone and get these access to these books. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't even know this existed. And I mean, we hope they keep on learning about it, and we're working on getting more exposure to Overdrive. But yeah, that's one of my favorite projects that I work on here at UNC.
Thank you so much, Suzelle. That Overdrive collection is amazing. So many books in there, so many titles, so many different formats that you can access a book. Yeah, I wonder, do you have a favorite book in the Overdrive collection?
That's like saying what's my favorite book. Like, I don't know. I love them all. And I got into audiobooks because of the Overdrive collection, because before I wasn't into audiobooks. And being a student assistant, shelving books, I can listen to something at the same time while I'm shelving. And that's how I got into audiobooks. The first one, I guess the first book that got me into audiobooks was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It's a good audiobook. So that's one of my favorites from the Overdrive collection that I've listened to.
Thanks, Suzelle. Let's go around. So, Bridget, I wonder if you want to talk a little bit about your collaboration with the Carolina Asia Center.
Sure. Before that, shout out to Suzelle and Libby. That's what helped me to get my good rate, like reading, goal complete this year. So a lot of audiobook for sure. Enjoy them. And so for me, I'm like starting from the beginning of my career. I am just full on for like cross department, on campus department collaboration. Like in my last job, I used to be the person because I taught in the museum. If I got stuck in the elevator with the faculty, I'll be like, hey, have you brought your class to the museum? You know we can do this and that with your class, right? So that energy just continue with me in this one. My primary role as the Asian Studies librarian is obviously to manage and expand the Asian collection and support scholars, faculty, and students on their research. But that won't stop me. And I am constantly looking for a new opportunity to collaborate and really bring out the voice of our on-campus Asian community and also like Asian collections out. So one of the things that I directly hop into is this collaboration with Carolina Asia Center, where they are on this 5-year journey of really making UNC the study of Southeast Asia hub of the South. So we are probably the only university that provide Vietnamese language class, and like they are on their search for a Vietnamese faculty, which is wonderful. And that came into my role where I want to promote and also support the learning and also the collection for Southeast Asia, where like faculties in that category are not within Southeast Asia department, but they're everywhere on campus. There's anthropology, there's geography, there's linguistic. So my goal is to bring their need together, and by expanding our general collection and doing some exhibitions on the global browsing display in Davis Library to really bring out what we have in the library to our audience, but also do a little bit advertising on the display to let our student, faculty, and staff know that we have amazing Southeast Asian sources. We are about to have our first ever like minor program next year. And there will be exhibitions in Wilson, in like FedEx Center, that all surrounded this like wonderful initiative. And I'm so glad that I'm a part of it and helping them to promote what they were already been doing. And the other thing that I'm really happy to do is like I'm also trying to support Asian American Studies program. And by doing so, I am looking forward to more collaboration with them as well as Wilson Library in the coming year. So that is actually very exciting.
Yes, that is. Thank you, Bridget. It sounds like you are really diving into engagement with students and faculty in Asian Studies and with the center. So thank you for sharing that. Joel, I know you mentioned, working with faculty on the health affairs side of campus, and I wonder if maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So I work mainly with internal medicine. When folks are there, whether it be clinicians, fellows, or residents, reach out and need support for their research, or if they need instruction for evidence-based practice, we provide that as well. Or sometimes it's even just point of care. They have a really difficult case that they're working on and need to look at previous case reports to see what else is going on. So I think we provide some of those really, really important resources. Sort of a new thing that I've started working on here recently, and a role that the Health Sciences Library has played for a while that I think is maybe not as well known, is I'm part of the IACUC committee. That's the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. It's a bit of a mouthful, which is why IACUC is usually how we say it. But what that committee does is they go through all the proposals for animal research that PIs submit here at the university. And then we also do semi-annual lab and facility inspections. So as my role as the only librarian on the committee is to help with literature searches for these proposals, and that focuses on ways that they can decrease distress for animals, that they can see if there are any alternatives. So if there's an alternative to using live animals, if there's some sort of other procedures that they could use. And also just to make sure that this is not research that already exists, to make sure they're not duplicating harm on animals if they don't need to. So I think this is a really important way that that I can contribute to the greater university community and the research ideals of the community here at UNC. I also think that it's a really great way to engage with certain faculty that I might not otherwise, especially hopefully the PIs see the value in the searches that we help them with, and hopefully they'll be willing to also come back to the Health Sciences Library for other things and remember that work that we do. So I think it's a really cool way to sort of engage with faculty in a very unique way. I think it's a fun opportunity, and it's also just interesting. You dive into something new every day, learning a lot.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Joel. And I feel like you put a friendly face to the Health Sciences Library, right? Like you're showing a lot of folks that we have so many resources to provide and provide access to. So Yeah. Brianna, I wanted to see if maybe you would like to talk about the Community-Driven Archives program in Wilson as our sort of program coordinator. I know that's something that sort of brought you here as a graduate student, and you've been working on it a little bit as you've started your professional career. It really is one of the hallmark sort of programs at Wilson, and it started in the Southern Historical Collection.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. I think the best way to describe the community-driven archives progress that the Southern Historical Collection has made is in the Archivist in a Backpack program. So this program was born out of a grant-funded phase that was done by my boss, the curator of the Southern Historical Collection, Chaitra Powell, and my colleague, Biff Hollingsworth, the outreach archivist, when they were recognizing that there were calls locally and nationally to diversify Wilson's holdings and Wilson's special collections. So Archivist in a Backpack was born out of the idea that oftentimes institutional archives are very mystified in processes and kind of a sometimes unfriendly exterior of Wilson Library. So Archivist in a Backpack is an attempt to bring in community stakeholders external to the university, as well as internal stakeholders, like student organizers, to have the supplies that they need in a backpack, take it with them if they're going to do like a physical space preservation of a space that's rapidly gentrifying, or perhaps like document preservation in their perhaps like a church basement or wherever they organize physically. So currently we're gearing up for the third phase of Archivist in a Backpack. And I would say probably the biggest piece of knowledge that I'm carrying with me into this new phase is that the oral history backpack has continued to be the most popular backpack in all three phases. And we're kind of slowing down and recognizing what campus connections we already have that are connected to oral history. One of the collections that the Southern Historical Collection manages is the Southern Oral History Program, which is based in the Love House on the outskirts of campus, and recognizing the rich oral history audio collection that already is, because that program was started in, I think, 1973. So we're really trying to make sure that we are building collaborations with Bridget and thinking about like the Southern Mixed Asian and Asian American Studies Oral History Project, or New Roots, which is a Latin American and Caribbean heritage oral history archive, which is also bilingual, which we're really excited about. And really just kind of seeing how we can make better collaborations and partner with people on campus, as well as assisting independent memory keepers out of campus.
Love hearing about this work and all of the collaborations that y'all are doing with Archivists in a Backpack, and thinking about oral histories and how we help preserve those. And thinking about preservation, Adrian, you sort of have a sort of behind the scenes look at our collections, right? You see it through a different lens, and I wonder if you might want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the epitome of behind the scenes, behind locked doors, the whole 9 yards. I can't tell you the number of times I've been working on something and have someone come through and go, "Oh, hey, what are you working on?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "I have no idea. It's a book by so and so. I can tell you the title. I don't know particularly why we have it. I don't know what the importance of it is. If you want to know anything about its structure, if you want to know its condition, if you want to know what the best climate conditions are to store it in, those are the answers I have for you. But what is it about? Not so solid on that one. My focus is the physical object. My focus is the structure. It's the returning things that are damaged to use. And it's important to me to understand, to a certain degree, the value of the item to the collection. And so, generally speaking, I don't treat anything without curatorial discussion, curatorial permission, because the curator is the one who's going to understand the priority of this piece to the overall story that these collections tell. My part of the conversation really is, can this be safely used? If it can't be safely used as is, what aspects of it can I change without inherently altering the value of this piece? What information does this convey that it needs to continue conveying? And sometimes those answers can be very extreme. Something that's in very, very damaged condition or very, very fragile, we may need to digitize and deliver it in a digital format and then just retain the original in the condition that it's in. Whereas other things I can actually go into and make the changes that I need to make in order to deliver it back to a user's hands without any significant concerns for its stability. But it always comes back to a use perspective. The entire purpose of my job is to return things to some usable form so that researchers can access it, so that someone can learn from it. What they learn from it is dependent entirely on the questions they bring to it. That's never where I'm coming from. As I said, I'm coming strictly from the perspective of, what can I change? What can I not change? And how can I bring this back into use?
Love that accessibility piece of conservation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for talking a little bit more specifically about your role and things that you are excited about, projects and initiatives, and your very work that you do here in the libraries. I want to open it up to our audience. It's now time for your questions if you have them. I want to remind you that the Q&A box is at the bottom and it is open for those questions if you have any. Of course, I have more questions for our panelists, but we welcome your submission of questions at the bottom of your screen. I'll give you a few minutes to do that, and maybe I'll ask a couple more questions of our group here. Thinking about librarianship in general and archives, there's always some myths that need to be busted or, questions about how do we stay on top of trends and developments. And I wonder if we could move there as sort of like a future-oriented part of our conversation. So Joel, I know that you have some thoughts on the role of libraries evolving in the digital age. And I know that the Health Sciences Library in particular is really sort of thinking about AI in a way that maybe not other folks are thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. It always cracks me up sometimes when I tell folks who are outside of the library world that, we have a hybrid work schedule. They're like, what? You can do librarianship from home? I'm like, yes. So much of what we do is on our computers nowadays, especially in the health field with just the speed of research. But one of the things I always tell folks is that so much research is being done. Research has sort of exploded in these recent years. And with all these digital tools, we have access to more and more than ever before. I find myself constantly working with researchers who have a project. I'm like, might want to scope this down because I think you're going to have like thousands of articles on this topic if you're not careful. So that comes in where libraries can help with those tools to make things more manageable as this research just continues to grow. One, of course, as you already mentioned, Monica, is the generative AI is sort of a hot topic. I really appreciate how the UNC libraries as a whole really has been handling things. There's a lot of shared knowledge going on, which I really appreciate. Folks will go to conferences and webinars and share out what they're doing. I know that one of the things that I've really enjoyed is we have a graduate assistant who does a generative AI tip of the week. So
That's right.
Yeah, there's little things that that help, to keep you sort of in tune with all the changes because stuff changes so quickly. And that helps a lot. And, I've had clinicians reach out and asking about how they can integrate generative AI tools in their work. So that's been fun to do. sort of searches on that and be like, let's figure it out. Because honestly, I'm not sure. Honestly, it scares me just a little bit thinking about doctors using generative AI for stuff, but I'm getting there.
We're evolving, just as
That's
libraries
right.
are.
So I think it is sort of a very unique role that the library can play with these tools, and thinking about how we can use them and how we can use them ethically and how we can use them well to sort of tackle these challenges and research, and also just like I mentioned, just your other work, like administration work for clinicians. And there's a lot of different opportunities. I think there's a lot of cool ways that librarians can bring our unique perspective on the information side of things to help that become a reality for folks.
Thanks, Joel. Well, we do have a couple of questions that came through in our Q&A box. So I'll ask the first one of our panelists. It is from a current graduate student at SILS. What is something that is not a priority within the UNC Chapel Hill libraries right now, but you wish it was? It could be collection development, community engagement, whatever comes to mind for you. Go ahead, Zizel. Yeah.
Okay. So I wouldn't say it's not a priority. It's definitely a priority. I wanted to go into the community engagement aspect.
Yeah.
That's really more like what I do, since I'm focused on circulation desk and I talk to students most of my time, like while I'm working. And I would say want the students here. We want them to be engaged. That's definitely a big part of the libraries, but I just wish there was more of it. Because some of the favorite things that students love about the libraries is like the space that we provide and what we provide for them. So for like these past 2 weeks, we did Week of Balance, and the students love that. I loved it as a student, and it's basically during the last 2 weeks, it's just exams. People are drained, they're tired. They want to go home, but they can't because they need to do these really hard exams. So the libraries provide spaces for them to like study and just to take mental breaks, pet therapy, dogs, pet therapy, miniature horses. The undergraduate library, and I know a couple other libraries have lo-fi lounges, where we play, lo-fi music so students can enjoy and hopefully make them more productive when they're studying. And we also do in the undergraduate library LNAP, which is Long Night Against Procrastination, before exams start. So just events like that, I think students love so much. And I just wish we could do it more throughout the year, because yeah, it's the end of the semester and now they're going home. But if we could provide activities like that throughout the semester, I just think students would appreciate the libraries even more than they already do.
Thank you, Zizel. Yeah. I got to pet a therapy dog earlier this week, and he was really sweet. It made my afternoon. So I'm hoping that, the students are also finding it helpful too. Did any other thoughts come to mind for folks for that question? Or we could move on to question number 2. Go ahead, Bridget.
Yeah, actually, I want to add a little more. I think it's still like semi-community engagement, but it's more of engaging campus community. And I don't think that is not a priority, like Zuzel mentioned. I think it's very much a priority of our library as much as like any academic library out there. But like every library is tied in terms of like our, the number of people actually working on it. And the central issue is like students are like we try to go to as much of classes to give them library instructions, at least within my team, and I'm sure within any like instruction related teams on campus. But there's just not a possibility that we can hit every single student or every single faculty and instructor at their time teaching or learning on campus about what library is, what can you get help from the library, and how can you use library better. So after I started to engage with more PhD and also second year master student, I realized that many of them have like this false expectation or like just myth about library. Things like we're in a digital age, therefore anything exists in the world can be found online. And like if they haven't found something, that is because they don't know how to find it, and I can definitely find it for them. And that is not true. So I feel like there is this thing of like how we can think about how can we better either train the trainers or spread the like impact for students to have a realistic expectation while being like smarter and more skillful of using library support rather than, you know, when you're a senior doing honor thesis and that's the first time you actually come and check out the book.
Right.
So yeah, so that is something that I really think we are really working on it, but there's just limitations.
That's true. Thank you both. Why don't we go to our second question that came in, and it is about the western part of our state and how the libraries might be able to assist. So the question is, do UNC Chapel Hill libraries assist other libraries throughout the state, especially from the preservation perspective? And for this audience person, what comes to mind is whether the UNC Asheville campus library was negatively impacted by the floods that recently hit Western North Carolina in the wake of Hurricane Helene, and whether wet and muddy materials may be saved.
So from an overall preservation perspective, the expertise available through the UNC Chapel Hill libraries is absolutely available throughout the UNC library system. If there are people who have questions, you know, want more information, want avenues to explore, my supervisor, who's the head of preservation and conservation services, is available to offer suggestions and advice, as am I. In regards to the specificity of the UNC Asheville campus library question, I have not specifically heard anything about materials from that library being damaged, but I know that NCDHC has been supporting partners in their network. We do have a staff member from the NCC Gallery who has volunteered through the State Archives Cultural Resources Emergency Support Team, otherwise known as CREST, to help. We've participated in campus-wide groups coordinating and supporting recovery efforts, and we've also coordinated with a group from the state library to help. So, like, I personally have not been out there, boots on the ground, but you know, the libraries are absolutely doing the best we can in order to provide the support they need.
That's right. I'll mention, so the NCDHC is the North Carolina Digital Heritage Center, and that actually helps digitize materials across all 100 counties. And they do have partners in the western part of the state. And yes, they have been in contact with them for sure. Also, the UNC system schools in general have sort of like a collaborative, right? And so our university librarians, our vice provosts for university libraries and directors of libraries, all of those top folks at those UNC system schools in those campus libraries really have come together, and in the wake of Hurricane Helene, really sort of tried to come together to put together a list of resources that we could send or reach out to for folks on the western part of the state in the UNC system schools. But this is a great question, and also sort of thinks it has us thinking about, well, what if something like that happened here at Chapel Hill, and what could we do to help preserve and our materials potentially that would need to be saved. So thank you, Adrian, so much for that answer. I think we have one more question, and Joel, this one might be more specific for you because it talks about clinicians. So, is it possible for clinicians outside of UNC to reach out with research questions for guidance?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things I guess I want to start with is talking about, we partner with AHEC. So that's for clinicians across the state can come and we help out with that, and they have a big resource collection. That's the word I was looking for. It's a Friday.
Yeah.
They have a big collection available to clinicians across the state, or more than happy to help with. Of course, the library is open for folks if they want to come in physically. And then we also have a health literacy librarian who can help with patient education, and they run the great website that has a lot of health information open for folks. I guess tying it back into a little bit the last question, it made me think of it is when Western NC was hit so hard, and their library, of course, wasn't able to keep up with questions from folks over in the hospital, and so that was routed to us here at HSL. So it's we do our best to help out wherever we can, especially with healthcare stuff. It's important that everybody has the information that they need, and we're doing our best to help as many folks as we can.
Thank you, Joel. Yeah. Well, we still have a little bit more time. The Q&A box is still open, but I'm wondering, since we're coming up almost on the end of our hour together, looking ahead to 2025, I'd like to ask our panelists, what are their hopes and plans that they are most excited to work on for this year coming ahead in 2025? So I think, Zuzelle, I'll start with you. What are you most excited for in the new year?
I'm most excited for just figuring out ways to make the undergraduate library and Davis Library just a more fun place for students. Because, I mean, my favorite part about it is just making libraries like a safe space for people, for students, community members, everyone. So just finding ways we can just develop more programs to make it a cool place to be. Yeah.
Brianna, what are you excited for in 2025?
I am excited for a community-driven archive summit that I'm organizing with an undergraduate student that I'm currently working with. We are exploring her interest and her personal investment in disability studies, as well as thinking about climate disasters and climate change, and thinking about inviting additional library practitioners and community activists, as well as community organization managers, to kind of think about the importance of archives when it comes to storing them and keeping them safe, whether it's digital or physical, as well as thinking about how to best prepare like our elders and the people in our communities for climate disasters through community archives. And I'm also excited to be working potentially with more undergraduate students. I think I'm echoing everybody when I say that Wilson Library specifically has some issues with inviting people and being a very friendly and open environment. So we are constantly working against that, but I feel hopeful that we'll invite more students in next year.
Yes, for sure. Adrian, I was going to go to you, and now I see that there's a specific question for you in the Q&A box. If you want to start with answering that question, and then maybe that could segue into something about 2025. It actually has to, it's asking you about your biggest project for the next year. So your question, Adrian, is how much of our preservation and repair work do we do ourselves, such as rebinding, creating book boxes, things like that? And what is your biggest project for next year?
Okay. So the first part of the question, I have to answer from two different perspectives because I wear two different hats when it comes to conservation at UNC. We have a phenomenal circulating collection that we allow a whole bunch of people a whole lot of access to, and that creates damage, as one would expect. Because these are circulating collection materials, for the most part, materials that are damaged through use are sent out for commercial binding. And we do also do a lot of orders for boxes that come in from the same company that does our commercial binding. At the same time, we do have a general circulating collection conservation lab that will do in-house rebinds and in-house housing, create custom housing for some of the more esoteric components to our circulating collection. Something that a lot of people tend to forget is that our special collections come from our circulating collections. That's the origin. So we do have some portions of our circulating collection that we treat more closely like special collections materials. But the balance is probably greater for our circulating collections that they are sent out to be rebound, or that we will order commercially made boxes for those. From the special collections perspective, all of our rebinding is done in-house. And that's if we go the route of rebinding. Generally, when I'm taking a look at materials, my preference is to retain as much of the original. And by original, I mean the item as it arrives in my lab, whether that's actually what it was when it was first created, or whether that shows all of the love and passion that people have shown this item over the years. So we do all of our repairs for special collections materials that are book and paper. I should clarify that are book and paper, paper-based items. All of that work is done in-house. Conservation is actually a very diverse field. There's a number of things in our collections that I am 100% not qualified to treat. We just recently sent a North Carolina collection painting out to a paintings conservator for a little bit of work. So from that perspective, we do bring outside experts in. We had a textile conservator come in recently to look at a silk ribbon on a watch that's going to be going on exhibit in the North Carolina Gallery next month. Stay tuned. So book and paper based. We do it all when we're talking about repairs. Boxes, again, it's a bit of a mix. I recently just wrapped up a project on boxing books with what is known in my field as furniture, which are all of those metal pieces that you find on corners in the center of boards, the bosses, the clasps, all of that stuff. They're not very kind to the books next to them on the shelves, to be perfectly honest with you. It would be like trying to share a bed with a suit of armor. So I did place an order for an outside company to make those boxes just because we needed them to be very durable. They needed to be very strong, and it was much more time efficient to have someone else make those. But we do also do a lot of our special collections housing in-house. So it's always a mix. What's going to be the most efficient? What do we have the materials for? What do we have the space for? And the second part of that question, sorry, I'm trying to scroll down to get to it. And
2025.
2025.
Yeah.
My biggest project. So I started this job, it'll actually be a year next week. And one of the things that really interested me in this position is that preservation and conservation have been at UNC for a long time. It's been decades. So it's a very well-grounded department within the UNC library community. But both of the people who started those programs stayed with those programs. They loved those programs. And so when our last senior conservator left in 19, I believe, she'd been guiding the ship for so long that there were some things that she was still doing because it was habit, as you do. So one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is I'm completely rebuilding our photographic documentation capacity, which doesn't seem exciting at all until I tell you that ethically I have to document anything that I am potentially going to make a change to. And it's extremely important that I can prove either one, that I did not change it, or two, if I did accidentally make a mistake, because I am human, that I have documentation of what it looked like before my humanity rained down on this poor thing. So photographic documentation is an integral part of my job. It's what lets me do my job with confidence when I have a complex treatment that I have to complete. And the camera that I inherited when I started, the digital camera was bought in 2009. Our photographic areas, the poor technician who was doing the photography was climbing up on stools. They were capturing images on the camera card. So every time they took a picture, they'd have to take the card out of the camera, take it to the computer. Is this in focus? Is this in frame? Can you imagine how much time this would take in order to actually document an item? So I am soup to nuts overhauling our complete photographic documentation setup with the lovely, very generous help from the Ellis and Rosa McDonald Foundation for funding this. So we're getting a new camera, we're getting new lights, we're getting a new camera stand, we're getting a whole new system. And I am super excited about that because until I have that in place, I cannot do like 2/3 of the treatments that are waiting for me.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. That's really exciting. It'll be a big project.
It's been.
Yeah. Joel and Bridget, I want to ask you about 2025 too. We have just a few minutes left, so quick round robin with both of you. Go ahead.
Sure, I can jump on first. I'll make it quick. So one of the things I'm looking forward to is right now I'm working on a project with some other folks here at the HSL on using near operators and the optimal number of words that can be in between a phrase. I'll try to keep it short. I feel like, I can dive into it a lot more, but we're going to present the project at MLA, the Medical Library Association conference in the spring. And I'm really excited for that. I haven't presented at a big conference like this before, so it'll be a big, professional development for me. And I'm also, of course, really happy to share the research that we're doing over here at HSL with the wider library community.
Thank you, Joel. And Bridget, what about you?
So I started very new, and this subject about like what on-campus faculty are working on have now been surveyed for like a many long time because we have like a 3-year vacancy for my job. So I pick up having one-on-one conversation, interviewing like faculty about, like what are they working on, their research and the class they're teaching, how this library can support them better by like surveys, instruction, and collection, like expanding collection. So I'm excited to continue this conversation while expanding to faculties who's teaching Asian culture, history, language, whatsoever related to Asian materials, but not with any Asian studies department. I'm excited to have more conversations outside of the traditional field that think about what Asian studies is. And this might even apply to STEM and also possibly public health and other health component that I might, I don't know, need someone from health science to help me with that. But yeah, I'm very excited to like expand the conversation, especially out of my comfort zone. So yeah, that's my 2025.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our panelists for sharing about your work and talking about what you're excited about for the new year. I really want to extend a thank you to everyone for joining us today for our Library Discovery Hour. And a special thanks to our friends of the Library Board. We are so grateful for your continued support of the libraries here at Carolina. There's so much to discover about the university libraries and how we enhance the experience of students, faculty, and friends like you. I hope you will mark your calendar for our next Library Discovery Hour on Valentine's Day, February 14th, where we will hear from Carolina students about their views of campus life and libraries today. Thank you.